Fire up. There we go. Okay. Hello and welcome everybody to the latest AIEB or Azure Intelligent Edge brief call. I'm Kevin Sullivan, and with us today we also have Carl Rottenstrach, and even though that I've known Carl for many years, I always feel like I'm butchering his last name, so I probably said it wrong. Not sure.
You do no worse than I do, Kevin. Don't worry about it.
That's right. And yeah, well, that's interesting. So anyway, so as always, very simple agenda we have for today. I'll kick off the call here just with a very quick overview of what this call is, what we tend to focus on, what my rather more specifically what my team focuses on for what we do here at Microsoft. I have a few tidbits, just some late news that might be interesting for you that are fans of the intelligent edge space and specifically around what we do here at Microsoft around Edge. And then we'll spend the bulk of our time in one focus area. And today we have Carl to talk about some things that he and others have been working on around some more details, some more guidance, and the options around. So when you have Azure Stack and you want to provide business continuity, disaster recovery, so that the whole BCDR area, so backup recovery as well as maybe some availability aspects as well as disaster recovery aspects. How would I do that within an Azure Stack environment? And then as always, we have folks on the line that are on my team as well as other folks that might be on the Microsoft side that might be able to field some questions before, during, and after all of this. And so we'll be doing that on IM as we go. All right, so apologize for those that have seen this probably 4 or 5 or 6 times if you've been on this call before, but for those that have not, just want to go over this very quickly. This is a briefing call. It's very informal. Yes, the folks, me and my team that run this call are on the Microsoft side, but it is open to everybody, customers, partners, even Microsoft internals, whoever is interested to learn about in very quick little sub 30-minute tidbits of time, things that we have going on around Intelligent Edge and what we have for a solution perspective. This isn't a forum to share NDA. I can't have you all sign it. I guess I could, but then we wouldn't get very far. So therefore, we can't discuss NDA information. Just keep that in mind as we go through this. If there are things that you may know because you are under NDA and all of that good stuff, we just can't discuss those openly. This is using regular Teams. If you're familiar with Teams, it's an excellent tool for collaboration. What makes it great is everybody's the equal citizen coming into Teams, meaning you can share out video and audio and steal the screen sharing and everything else. And you could really kind of disrupt if you really wanted to, because everybody's on the same even playing field. Please do not do that. Just want to make sure that everybody has good experience with this. But yes, for now, we have a fairly intimate crowd here today, and never had more than 50 or 60 yet on these calls, so that's a pretty good number. We'll just keep using this just for the easier collaboration aspects for this call. The call is posted at, or will be, this call and others in the past will be posted at that aka.ms link /AIEB-channel. That will take you to a simple YouTube channel, which you'll see this eventually, as well as past sessions we've had of this briefing. Okay, so a couple of quick pieces of news I found pretty interesting. I'll start with the one on the bottom first. So Schlumberger, who is a big provider of services to the oil and gas industry worldwide, we've been working with Schlumberger for a while now, and not just, obviously before Intelligent Edge and things like Azure Stack and all of that good stuff, but specifically around Edge. They made an official announcement about the work, and specifically a solution they have called Drill Plan and some others to follow, to essentially have that deployed, or have that as an option to be deployed on Azure Stack. So the short story, and you can read about it on this press release at that link, but essentially what's interesting about it is they have this solution. This Drill Plan solution does run great in Azure, but there are cases in certain parts of the world where they have physics problems, right? If the latency is too horrible, even with all the regions we have worldwide, and or we have in-country data sovereignty things that need to be adhered to that just basically exclude them from pushing data to maybe an Azure region that maybe leaves the country. And so Azure Stack's a good solution. So it's exactly one of the main reasons why we have things like Azure Stack and continue to evolve this edge solution, that is bringing a subset of Azure platform and a consistent Azure platform down to an area where it's needed to solve these very problems. The one at the top is interesting. So I created an AKA link for this. So a couple of just things if you click on it. So if you go to AKAMS/DE-backpack, so Satya Nadella gave a keynote at, I believe it was our government here in the States, the government leadership summit, I believe is what it was. And it's about an hour long, but if you go to that link, there's about a 7.5 minute clip where Satya talks about what we're doing in Edge, and specifically DataBox Edge. And so at that clip, it'll show you Dean Perrin, one of our PMs on the DataBox Edge side, shows off this thing I have in the red circle here, which is an actual human carryable battery operated DataBox Edge. And so if you think that DataBox Edge, if you know anything about DataBox Edge, for what it is, it's a 1U server class machine. So it sits in a chassis. You need sure, you can put it anywhere you want, but that anywhere you want, they better be at least a room to where a server can sit and not get jostled around, and certainly something that has constant power to it. And so now we have a prototype of a model that Dean showed off here and talked about some use cases around using one that may actually be something you could literally carry into places such as the middle of nowhere, fields of battle, or maybe outbreaks in certain countries where I need compute power and I need solutions to essentially that I have that I can bring down to my edge device, but then run completely and utterly disconnected from the rest of the world. And so it's pretty interesting. It's a nice little clip to see, and just kind of a teaser of what's to come. So those of you lucky enough that will be going to Ignite here next month, be on the lookout for even more announcements. So I expect they'll be talking more about this in certain sessions around Edge, as well as a lot of other things we have cooking for DataBox Edge, as well as Azure Stack. Okay, so just a very brief overview. And again, I do these slides a lot, so I'm going to breeze through that one. Essentially, what we have from an intelligent edge perspective, what we mean by that. So if you look at Microsoft's kind of, what do we do tactically, and what's the taxonomy look like as far as what we offer to edge compute and edge from an Azure perspective. This is a very good high level, right? Everything from things we're doing with Azure Sphere, working with folks that create microcontrollers, makers of the many thousands of devices and hundreds of partners that offer IoT devices, and what we're doing with the IoT device SDK, as well as our IoT Edge, to essentially make those devices more integrated or easier to manage, as well as use and in certain IoT solutions with our own Azure IoT, and specifically Azure IoT Hub. Where my team and what we typically focus on is really this purple part, kind of in between the hyperscale cloud, which is as what we call Azure, and very lower end things that are in the sensors and the devices that our partners and others may have. And so today, those are two specific things: are edge appliances such as DataBox Edge, as well as a subset of Azure, and we call that Azure Stack, bringing that down to your premises where it's needed. And so those are the type of talks that we have in this particular call. And speaking of which, I'm going to let Carl take it away from here, and Carl will spend the next 20 minutes or so talking about specifically on Azure Stack, the BCDR stuff, and some options and guidance that we have coming out that's going to be helpful to figure that all out. Go ahead, Carl, if you want, and steal. Well, you already stole Sharon. I'll shut up now and let you take it.
Yeah, it was a perfect transition. That worked out really well. So yeah, thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who's with us here on a holiday weekend. Boy, it's funny, once you get a ways out of school, you just completely lose track of what holiday days off are, right? It's crazy. So we're going to talk today about a disaster recovery pattern that, as Kevin mentioned, there are a bunch of us on the Global Black Belt team that are working with our peers in the product management team to build some guidance around how to deploy particular applications or reference architectures for networking, or in this case, I've been working on a pattern or a reference architecture for business continuity, how to protect the applications and the data sets that live on your Azure stack. And we have this highlighted, and we talk about this when we work with our customers and our partners around Azure Stack solutions, that business continuity is a very important thing to consider. Just like any environment, whether you're running today on Hyper-V or VMware or Nutanix Acropolis or in a public cloud infrastructure, you need to have a strategy for protecting your applications and data that are out there, that are part of that production data set that you are delivering to your end customers. And we know that there's a lot of redundancy built into an Azure Stack system. We have multiple levels of redundancy from a networking and a server and a storage perspective that help you to make sure that your applications are up and online during physical failures and during patch and upgrade sequences. But bad things happen. I happen to live in North Florida. Our area was hit by hurricanes 2 out of the last 3 years. We're fortunate, if you can believe that, to have advanced warning when storms are coming our way. And it allows enterprises that are based in North Florida to have time to perform a planned recovery in an alternate area if they need to, an alternate geographic area. Well, sometimes disasters aren't as nice as hurricanes that have a cone that narrows and gives you some warning. And you need to make sure that whether it's an act of nature or something malicious or accidental. We've had companies here in North Florida that have been impacted by construction projects that have severed fiber or severed power and prevented a typical production environment from functioning the way that it should. And Azure Stack, of course, is no different. It's a physical solution. You have to have a strategy to protect the data and the applications that reside on it. So as part of this pattern, I've documented, and I'll show you this document going forward, how do you protect things like the actual configuration of the Azure Stack itself. We do have a means to, in an automated fashion, write out that configuration for the system to a shared location, to a file share. So you need to be able to do that and, of course, recover that. One recovery environment that's available to you is basically offering a second physically separate Azure Stack within an area, a region that can be replicated to over an IP network. And depending on what I'm protecting, I need to have different strategies in place in order to provide that level of recovery and resiliency. In the case of the Azure Stack configuration, I can copy that out and restore that to an alternative Azure Stack or back to the original Azure Stack. But with things like app services, I need to have a different strategy. App services are really meant to be a composable part of your infrastructure. So you can have your DevOps pipelines deploy to a second stack, either simultaneously when you deploy that application, or do that periodically as part of a disaster recovery engagement. Objects that live in blob storage need to be protected. And a great way to do that is with our AZ Copy utility. AZ Copy can run on a VM on Azure Stack or on a machine external to the Azure Stacks and download and upload objects that have changed and been modified over time. That's something that you can set up to occur in a scheduled fashion. Some of our third-party partners like Commvault also have the capability to protect and copy objects from one object storage account to another, and that's something that I'm not going to show you today, but is certainly possible. What I am going to show you is how to protect virtual machines. And in this case, you have two options based on the tool that you're leveraging. I'm going to show you an example today using Commvault. What Commvault is doing in the example that I'm going to give is protecting my virtual machine configuration and data to an object storage account running on a second Azure stack. Now, you can also have real-time or near real-time replication occurring between two running VMs. But in this case, I'm doing something that's a little lower cost and also slightly higher RPO and RTO by copying that data to a storage account and then periodically updating the VM image. So it's a little lower cost because I'm not running VMs 24/7, 365 in both environments. But if you need a faster failover, less data loss, and a more up-to-date data set, then replicating between two live VMs is the best solution for you. Now, an Azure hyperscale cloud is also an option for a recovery environment, and I can use those same tools and techniques to replicate to standby VMs, have a second instance of app services running in an Azure hyperscale cloud, or just copy objects to an object storage account, a blob storage account that lives in an Azure hyperscale cloud infrastructure as well. So you've got several options here in terms of where you can recover that data, where you can recover those applications, and even make the failover and routing the traffic to those alternate sites slightly easier with solutions like our own traffic manager or an external load balancing and DNS infrastructure. So a lot of options in terms of how you can tackle this problem of making sure that your applications and data remain resilient and available in the event of a disaster. Now, I'm going to demonstrate Commvault today. Commvault is one of many of our partner solutions that's available in the Azure Stack Marketplace. In my case, for this demo, I added the Commvault image, their disaster recovery backup solution, from the Azure Marketplace to our Azure Stack Marketplace. I syndicated that. And then it was available for me to deploy really, really easily through the wizard-based approach that you get anytime you want to deploy a new resource on top of Azure Stack. So really, really easy to do that. And many of our partners, like some of the ones that I've highlighted here, offer the same capability to syndicate an image from the Azure Marketplace to Azure Stack, and to make your deployment much easier with a backup and disaster recovery solution. So what does this one look like? What am I doing? Well, I have a Commvault CommCell server that is deployed in my environment, and that Commvault server is communicating with VSA proxy, basically virtual machines that are running inside of my Azure Stack subscriptions that are working with our API set to periodically back up my machines, transfer that data to blob storage, and then create recovery VMs that are idle the vast majority of the time, but are there to be booted based on that last transferred image when I need to either test my disaster recovery plan or declare an actual disaster and run production from that alternate environment. In my case, a second Azure Stack. So let's go ahead and take a look at this here for a few minutes. What does this look like to manage and monitor? And then we're going to come back, and I've got a list of really good links for you that go into this even further. And I'll give you a preview of that pattern documentation that right now is going through evaluation, and we hope to get these published by Ignite. So you folks will have some great guidelines, again, around networking, business continuity, and application deployments to follow going forward with validated best practices. All right, so let's switch over here. First, we will take a look at my Azure Stack environment here, and I happened to capture this while Commvault was finishing some of the jobs here. You'll see that I've got a host of VMs. Here is my Commvault CommServe, and then I have two production machines that I am protecting between subscriptions. And we caught it in the middle of working through some of its last-minute activities while I'm running a job to synchronize between these two environments. So what this Commvault Live Sync operation has done is created a standby VM for me in my recovery environment, and you can see that it's currently in a deallocating state. So these VMs are ready. They have the configuration that I've pushed out and delivered and configured as part of my Live Sync setup, and they are going to be available in a not running state for me to bring online when I need to either test or declare a disaster. So the nice thing is that if I'm on a pay-as-you-go model with my Azure Stack, I'm not paying to run virtual machines that are just sitting there, and in the event that I need them, that something goes horribly awry in my production environment. And I manage all of this through the Commvault interface. So right now I have that replication job that is running. It's 90% complete. You can see I have 2 VMs that are protected. And if I wanted to add a third VM or additional VMs to this protection policy, that's a pretty easy thing to do. One, discovery of VMs occurs automatically because I have my Azure stacks configured as hypervisors that Commvault software is interacting with, leveraging our REST APIs. And then from there, I have policies set up to back up my VMs and then to replicate them and merge changes with LiveSync. And it's really easy for me to add a new VM to an existing policy. Like this one, I am backing up to an object storage account, a blob storage account on another Azure stack. And I am able to go in and modify that job and add in another VM to protect, or more VMs to protect. You can see there are the 2 that I had previously configured. I can come in here. Commvault will leverage our Azure Stack APIs and will let me easily add other virtual machines that it's discovered from within the same resource group or different and distinct resource groups. So here's a brand new Microsoft SQL Server running on Ubuntu that I can go ahead and choose to add to this group. And now that policy, which runs every 2 hours to back up those prior 2 machines, will apply to my Ubuntu SQL Server. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that out, but that's nice and easy to do. And then from there, if I also want that machine to be available using LiveSync for that fast failover based on the that idle machine instance that we saw currently being deallocated for one of my other machines, I can do that by going into my existing replication group, which starts that synchronization and merge activity immediately after a backup job creates. So I've effectively got a 2-hour RPO policy put in place for VMs that are part of this group. And I can go ahead and add that VM into this policy as well. So the changes are merged. I have a standby VM, and if I need to activate that if I need to activate these VMs in the event of a disaster, I can do that, and I can do it by failing over the entire group. So really easy to manage here. I manage things based on policies. I manage groups of machines, and it means that I don't need to configure things on an individual VM by VM basis or push agents to these individual VMs. I'm doing all of this with the really cool capabilities that I have, leveraging those REST APIs from Azure Stack. And then I can always monitor exactly how my replication is doing. You probably saw this on the last screen, many of you, because you're observant. You're reading these things as I'm doing them. But I have a job in process right now, so we can see my SQL Server is still synchronizing between the 2 stacks. I have my web server in sync, and because it is in sync, I can go ahead and do things like fail that machine over, or again, fail over a group of machines, and do it in a planned or unplanned fashion. And the planned is going to do it in a graceful manner, It's going to shut down the production machines. It's going to perform one more replication cycle, and then it's going to bring my standby machines on my disaster recovery stack online. And unplanned assumes that the production machines can't be reached. So it's going to go ahead and just start to online my DR VMs without worrying about what state the production machines are in. So this allows me to run my entire infrastructure independent of production, perform failovers whether production is available or not. And again, it has that native API level integration with Azure Stack. So you don't need to maintain a whole bunch of agents. All of this work is done through the Azure Stack hypervisor level components and the REST APIs that we make available. So that's an example of what you will find in these pattern documents that we are working on. The one that I've been putting together is a little more comprehensive than just the Commvault scenario that we saw here. It talks about how to do this type of activity with replication, application level replication, things like MongoDB, MySQL, SQL Server, of course, can replicate, completely exclusive of Azure Stack. And tools like Azure Site Recovery can be used to replicate to Azure. So I've got a whole bunch of this documented here, step-by-step processes on how to set it up. And one of the things I did want to highlight as well in this pattern is I've also included how to protect storage accounts, those blob storage accounts that contain critical application data. So again, step-by-step guidance on how to set that up, and things that normally are held in multiple different documents are all in one location. This combines 3 different reference documents that are out there on the web into one nice, easy to follow guide. And then I know we are almost at time, so what I want to leave everybody with here is further guidance and deep dives on additional tools that are available. That's the last link that you see on this slide. If you want to go through step-by-step documentation on how to configure Commvault LiveSync to do what I showed you, that's a link to their online documentation. We've got a great in-depth white paper that covers everything that I tried to cover in 15 minutes in much more depth. And I know on prior calls we've talked about the IaaS blog series. Just cannot say enough good things about what our friends on the PM team have done. And part 4 is from our very own Hector Linares, and really deep dives into the tools and the processes and the things to think about when you are concerned with protecting VM-based applications on Azure Stack. So I know that was quick, but hopefully a good overview of what we're putting together in the patterns, some guidance on the things to think about and how to take care of your concerns around business continuity and disaster recovery, and hopefully a reminder that these are things that you do need to manage, take care of, and have a plan around when you're running production applications on Azure or Azure Stack. All right, Kevin, that is it.
All right, awesome. Thanks. I just called you awesome. Thanks, Carl. Let me share, sharing back. Yeah, so so the guidance and documentation that Carl alluded to, it's coming. It absolutely is coming soon. It is also part of the same series of things. I believe it was the last call I talked about some of the networking options and interconnectivity a la site-to-site VPN between stack to stack or stack to on-prem or VNet to VNet inside stack, et cetera. So that is also part of that same body of work. Several of us are involved in getting those ready, and hopefully in the coming weeks, by next month, we'll have that guidance out and available for public consumption. All right, well, we are at time, and again, thanks for joining. Next call will be 2 weeks from today, so that will be October 25th, if I've got my calendar correct, 11 a.m. U.S. Central Time. I do have a potential topic. It looks most likely the gentleman that is leading the charge around, what about fleet management? As many of you know, Azure Stack has a longer term roadmap to provide endpoints across multiple stacks. Today, that's not the case. there absolutely are ways that we can do centralized fleet management, if you will, or what we sometimes call fleet management of multiple Azure stacks to make your job a little harder if you find yourself in a situation where I've got not one, not two, but many Azure stacks to wrangle, if you will. So that will most likely be our next topic. Don't hold me to that, but that's what it's looking like to be for October 25th. With that, I will let you guys go and off and to enjoy your weekend. And any questions that you have, feel free to reach out to me or this team. Happy to help you guys out and direct you to the proper resource if I cannot. And with that, I will end the call. Thanks, everybody.